quiet Greyhound bus rolled through the dark Canadian highway. Most passengers were asleep. Some listened to music. Others stared out the window as endless miles of road slipped by. But one passenger near the back of the bus was sitting perfectly still, watching, waiting, and within minutes, that peaceful ride would turn into one of the most horrifying crimes ever witnessed in public. On July 30th, 2008, a routine bus trip across Canada became the scene of a nightmare that shocked the entire country. Dozens of passengers would witness something so disturbing that many of them struggled with trauma for years afterward. A crime that happened in front of everyone, yet almost no one could stop. This is the story of the Greyhound bus attack and the killing of Tim McLean. The following video contains discussions of violent crime and disturbing events. Some images or descriptions may be graphic. Viewer discretion is advised. That evening, a Greyhound bus was traveling along the Trans-Canada Highway in Manitoba. Inside were 38 passengers making the long journey across the country. Some were traveling home, others were heading to work. For most people, it was just another ordinary trip. Among them was 22-year-old Tim McLean. Tim worked as a carnival barker, a job that meant constantly moving from city to city. He had just finished working at a fair in Edmonton and was heading home to Winnipeg to visit family. Friends described him as outgoing and friendly, someone who could make strangers laugh within minutes. That night, Tim found a seat near the back of the bus. He put on his headphones. He slowly laid his head against the window pane and drifted to sleep. Earlier that evening, the bus had made a stop in Erickson, Manitoba. At around 6:55 p.m., a new passenger boarded. He carried no luggage. He barely spoke to anyone. Witnesses later said he appeared calm, but strangely distant. His name was Vince Lee, a tall man in his 40s with a shaved head and sunglasses. At first, Lee sat near the front of the bus, then moved to sit next to McLean after a scheduled rest stop in Brandon. Two strangers, sitting side by side. Neither of them spoke. For nearly an hour, nothing unusual happened. Passengers later said the bus felt quiet that night. The highway stretched through rural Manitoba, long, empty, and dark. Inside the bus, most people had settled in for the ride. Some watched movies on small screens, others slept as the bus hummed steadily down the road. But near the back of the bus, something changed. Without warning, without any argument, without even a word, Vince Lee suddenly turned toward Tim McLean. Tim McLean was still asleep when the attack began. Lee pulled out a large knife and began stabbing McLean in the neck and chest. Tim let a blood-curdling scream. He tried to fight back, but Lee robotically plunged the blade into Tim's shoulders, neck, and chest, over and over and over. Passengers nearby initially thought it was some kind of fight. But there had been no conversation, no argument, just sudden chaos. Screams quickly filled the bus as passengers realized what was happening. The bus driver immediately pulled over to the side of the highway. People rushed toward the front exit in panic. Within seconds, the bus emptied. The driver and two other men tried to rescue McLean, but were chased away by Lee, who slashed at them from behind the locked bus doors. Terrified passengers stumbled out onto the roadside, unsure of what they had just witnessed. But Vince Lee remained inside the bus, alone, with Tim McLean. Tim was clearly dead, but Lee wasn't even close to finished. Outside the bus, passengers gathered along the highway. At 8:30 p.m., the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Portage la Prairie received a report of the stabbing. Some passengers were crying, while others were vomiting from what they were witnessing. Through the bus windows, people could still see movement inside. No one dared go back in. Several passengers later said they felt helpless, forced to watch something unimaginable unfold just a few feet away. Lee decapitated McLean and displayed his severed head to those outside the bus, then began severing other parts of McLean's body and consuming his flesh. This went on for some hours. The driver locked the bus doors to keep the attacker inside. A trucker, who happened to be passing by during the horror event, gave the driver and one other passenger tools to use as weapons against the enraged Vince Lee. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Police were on their way, but the highway felt impossibly quiet, and every minute seemed to stretch forever. When police arrived, they quickly surrounded the bus. Officers could see Vince Lee still inside. He appeared calm, yet disconnected from everything around him. Police attempted to communicate with him through the bus windows. They asked him to surrender peacefully, but Lee did not respond normally. Witnesses described him as behaving strangely, almost as if he were in another world. The suspect alternately went back and forth inside the bus as he defiled the corpse. Police saw Lee eating parts of the body and heard him say, "I have to stay on the bus forever." Negotiations continued for hours. At one point, Lee tried to drive off the bus, but the driver engaged a safety mechanism that rendered the bus inoperable. Emergency lights illuminated the empty highway, and dozens of shaken passengers waited nearby, trying to process what had just happened. At around 1:30 a.m., Lee tried to leave the bus by breaking a window. The police arrested Lee. He was shot twice with a taser, handcuffed, and put in the back of a police cruiser. Parts of the victim's body were retrieved from the bus and placed in plastic bags. His ear, nose, and tongue were found in Lee's pockets. The victim's eyes and a part of his heart were never recovered, and it is presumed that they were eaten by Vince Lee. The crime shocked Canada. News spread quickly across the country and around the world. How could something like this happen on a crowded bus? Investigators began examining Vince Lee's background. What they discovered would change how the case was understood. During the trial, psychiatric experts examined Lee's mental health. Doctors determined that he was suffering from severe schizophrenia. At the time of the attack, they said he was experiencing intense delusions and hallucinations. According to medical testimony, Lee believed something completely different was happening around him. In Lee's mind, McLean was a demon in disguise and an alien who needed to be destroyed, to the point where he felt it was necessary to mutilate McLean's body to prevent him from coming back to life. Lee said he felt pressured by the voice in his head, telling him to kill Tim, or he would be killed himself. Stephen Allison, a passenger who was sitting directly beside Vince Lee across the aisle, was questioned by reporters about the incident. He had collaborated with the bus driver and the trucker in a trial to save Tim McLean.
I was just reading a book. All of a sudden I heard a guy screaming. I turned around and the guy sitting right next beside me was standing up and stabbing another guy with a Rambo knife, pretty much. It was a big survival knife like this in the throat, repeatedly. Told everybody to get off the bus. Everybody started to get off the bus. The guy still kept stabbing him. Everybody got off the bus. Me and a trucker that had stopped and the Greyhound driver ran up to the door to maybe see if the guy was still alive or we could help or something like that. And when we all got up, we seen that the guy was cutting off the guy's head. It was at that point that he came, started walking to the front of the bus, and he had the head in his hand, and he just looked at us like this and dropped it on the ground, like totally calm. The three of us had weapons from the trucker's truck there, and we just stayed outside while he tried to get out the door, telling him, "No, stay put, stay there, don't try to come out." He tried to get the bus working, and the bus driver disabled the bus somehow in the back. I'm not sure how he did it. It was at that point, I think, that the police showed up and kicked us off, got us to the back, the end of the bus there.
In 2009, the court delivered its verdict. Vince Lee was found not criminally responsible for the murder due to mental illness. Instead of prison, he was sent to a high-security psychiatric hospital in Selkirk, Manitoba. There, he would receive treatment and remain under strict supervision. Over the following years, doctors reported that medication and therapy had significantly improved his condition. But the case remained deeply controversial. Many Canadians struggled to understand the decision. For Tim McLean's family, the pain never disappeared. After several years of psychiatric treatment, review boards gradually reduced restrictions on Vince Lee. Doctors said he no longer posed a danger if he continued treatment. In 2015, he was granted a full discharge from the mental health system. To some experts, the case demonstrated how effective psychiatric treatment could be, but for many others, it raised difficult questions about justice and public safety. The Greyhound bus eventually continued traveling that highway. Passengers returned to their lives. But the memory of that night never disappeared. Bus passengers were severely traumatized. Some haven't recovered today. That includes emergency personnel and professional people who were present and exposed to this trauma. Sometimes the most disturbing crimes don't happen in dark alleys or hidden places. Sometimes they happen in ordinary places, on ordinary days, with ordinary people, and sometimes the person sitting quietly beside you is hiding a nightmare no one could have imagined. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe for more true crime documentaries. And let me know in the comments what case you'd like to see covered next. Because some of the most chilling stories in history are the ones that actually happened.